The goal of any video maker is to make sure that the public is able to understand what I'm saying. In this video, I'm probably not going to care so much. We have to be very concerned about who understands this, but we also want to teach in a way that people can understand. And so there'll be a nice balance in this video. Is there free will? And I've touched upon this, been through a lot of different ideas, and the answer is that there is no free will in the universe, in nature. What that entails is that everything that you do is pre-planned. So it's pre-planned by your mind, it's pre-planned by different forces or by different aspects of your mind before it happens in so-called reality, or what you understand as cause and effect. So with that said, anything that you do, you should not be judged negatively for. Of course, you shouldn't be judged positively for either, technically. But what tends to happen is we have an ego that says this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. But more specifically, especially in this paradigm, this is valuable and this is helpful for me personally, and this is not valuable for me personally. And those people on this side, they get thrown to the dumps, and the people on this side, they get welcomed into society, they get noticed. And that's how our survival of the fittest is set up in stage orange capitalism. Okay, and it works this way anywhere before stage orange using the spiral model. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because it's counterintuitive, and it will help you understand why we should not be saying this person deserves reward and benefits and help while this person does not, or this person deserves more of it while this person does not. Now, besides the ludicrous notion of an oligarchy making those who already have benefits required to have more benefits, while those who don't have benefits required to not have benefits, we're not talking about that. We're talking about just the practical absurdity of the concept of treating those who didn't do anything to actually get anywhere, except for some forces behind your mind that prearranged it, to give that person some kind of luxurious or positive dynamic in his life. Now, once that's said, maybe it's already been drilled home that there is no free will in terms of who gets judged in terms of what is necessary for them to have or allowable for them to have. Now, let's go back to the fundamental philosophical question, because people are coming here obviously interested in that. There is no free will from a knowledge standpoint, because when you ask about free will, you're assuming that the human being is applicable in how we have to understand the question. That said, the human being has certain notions of how to understand this question. But because there's always knowledge in any given instant, that means that because knowledge is the basis for knowing cause and effect, and the cause and effect are infinitely known by an observer or a watcher, then there is no free will. Okay? Now, the experience I've had is that I was doing actions before I did them in my mind, right? So those are thoughts. So Sam Harris will call this the 7-second no free will concept or something of the sort. But I'm not talking about that. That idea is that the mind is planning things out way in advance and is able to predict very far into the future. Not just 7 seconds, it may even be more like minutes. And everything is time slotted where that free will is not even in play, because things have to do with probability and things have to do with what you're destined to do based on how you currently are. So that is the upper right quadrant in integral in the four quadrants. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about something that's a little deeper. That's rooted in the upper left quadrant. That talks about why we have the outcomes that we have. The reason is because your psyche desires something, and that desire goes into the external world, and it causes events to happen that are in touch with that desire. Now, in mainstream, they call this law of attraction or law of manifestation. But sometimes you just can't manifest something, and why? Why can't you? So the answer is because there's another part of your psyche that wants a different manifestation. So you see, the no free will concept is esoteric, and it's so deep that, it's like, why are we rewarding anyone and why are we punishing anyone? And so I don't want to dismiss the concept entirely, because clearly the 3D mechanical world functions in this way. But the problem is, it's all based on criteria that is self-justified, that's often unique to specific individuals. And those specific individuals are part of the psyche because they have their own embodiment of energy. And so there's a feedback system where just by meeting anyone, their energy latches onto you and infringes and has an eye, either an evil eye or a positive eye in terms of what it allows you to have, because it wouldn't be fair if you did or didn't have something based on its premise, based on its belief systems, what it thinks is right. Now, even if you had someone who evolved and doesn't believe in right and wrong, there's always a value system. Now, that value system may be complex, but it can't be stopped, particularly because beneath the consciousness, we have a foundation of stage amber, also known as blue in regular spiral dynamics, as opposed to integral theory. And what that teaches is that there's right and wrong. And the right and wrong developed based on common sense over the eras. But what happened was we got stuck in right and wrong. So now stage blue is everyone, even if you think you evolved. And as such, your motivation to have a lot of money and to say this person deserves and not deserves is based on the blue and the orange. The capitalism mindedness would be more pure if there was no rigidity. Okay, so the colors move into each other and they take upon their own role from previous generations. But what that also shows you is that as you progress, as evolution takes place, the complexity entails that there isn't a linear process and you can have things all across the board. So the example I gave is Egypt. Egypt is a culture and a dynasty or language that before it stopped, it was going back at least 4,500 years. And they were a culture that was orange. Clearly, the luxury and building and designs, but they had animistic stuff to them, so it was purple. So which one is it? So it was both. And part of the reason why they were able to sustain orange was because they had a fixed system that was relaxed. They already understood the justice system, and people, their egos were in check. They had a system that works for everyone in society. So what ended up happening was you had people that were okay with that system, and you were able to have orange despite. Now, what we call orange is actually just wanting to live life. So to say orange is about building, while other colors are not about building, that's also a simplification. So even though there is, I'm breaking this down, it's more complex. Now, what does this connect to with free will? Underneath the psyche. So underneath your psyche, you're basically being controlled to do specific things. But when you say something, like if you get upset at a certain person, people are going to judge you for that. Even though there was prearranged stuff going on that a specific soul would inhabit your body, that particular person would not like it that particular time in that particular way, with your particular mood, with the foods that you were eating and all the different things that were influencing you to act in that particular way. All that was prearranged ahead of time. Even every syllable that I'm saying with my voice, it's all prearranged so that every single person hearing every single syllable would either like it or dislike it in a particular way, because of all the complexities of nuances of what outcome a specific entity within the time frame that spans timelessness wants. But I'm judged for that, for something that's outside of my control, something that I was forced to be like. When you're impressing other people, it really has to do with getting lucky to say things or to reach a place in your life where you say things that happen to be harmonized and to be accepted by the people that are listening to your video. It's coincidence and it involves hard work, but not just hard work, something that's defined by a specific underlying consciousness as hard work, or something that's worthy to be compensated with, such that he or she deserves to be put on a pedestal as having high value or having value. And that goes into the can of worms of what high value is. So it doesn't exist. It just happens to do with luck. At a given point in time, the ego perceives something as high value. And so that's why it's absurd when people talk about high value, low value, and they're using me being high value and famous and well known as the precedent for why they shouldn't have a low self-esteem when a girl dumps them in their mind. Like, you're just as delusional as you were 5 years ago if you're using that logic, because value doesn't exist. You're just trying to feel better about yourself, which we all do. But at least understand that that's what you're doing. Even though involves self-deception. So there you have it. There's varying degrees of no free will. There's the brain's upper right quadrant predicting like pretty much everything. There's the upper left quadrant that have different aspects that are infringing their will and desire, so you get or don't get something. And then there's the systems involved in the bottom right quadrant that says this is how this and this works. And because you don't fit well in that particular system with how you are and how you function, the bottom right quadrant in integral theory doesn't cater towards what you need. And so that's not your fault. But because of circumstance and coincidence, you have to be deemed lesser in society. Okay? And because you happen to function in a different way because of your biological in the upper right quadrant and the way you've handled, the way your conscious works and the way you feel like you fit in, then the bottom left quadrant, you can't be on par with other people. You can't sense out what they actually need in a way that's conducive for creating a community. Now, of course, these skills are buildable, right? And you can find a niche technique that is very rare and may work sometimes and may not work others, but eventually you'll figure something out. But still, it's hard work. Why should a person have to work so hard? And so you see here that the bottom left quadrant and how you're able to think in a way that's going to make people like you, that's also not your fault. So pretty much anything you do in history and in your life is not something that you can control. And therefore, it's not something that you should be condemned for, as if you had something to do with it. Of course, put in the so-called effort, but it's a whole can of worms to say effort should be the pinnacle god of our consciousness, of how we should think about things in society, which is how we currently are. And once that's eliminated, we'll have our head on straight. We'll finally be smart. We'll finally be rational and move in the right direction.